Inside Out 2, the sequel of one of the most loved animated movies made by Disney and Pixar studios. The movie came out on June the 14th, and ever since it was released, every single person that has gone to watch it has praised it. The reviews have been amazing all over the world, and the ratings are up in the sky. This is mainly because Inside Out 2 is bringing a new and fresh style to the animation industry that we hadn't seen for a very long time. Inside Out 2 overall is definitely the best animated movie we're going to see this year, and especially one of the best animated movies ever made in this decade. The life of Riley growing up and having anxiety, the new emotions coming in and taking control over her brain and bottling up the old emotions while anxiety is dominating every single part of Riley's life was portrayed in such a beautiful and emotional way that it is rightly so the best animated movie we've seen for a long time. But Inside Out 2, being the amazing and very entertaining movie that it is full of Easter eggs and secrets hidden within the movie that you never got to see. And you most probably didn't see these secrets because you were too focused watching the movie, of course. So without further ado, we're gonna see all the amazing secrets hidden in Inside Out 2 that you definitely didn't get to see. Let's go. About 15 minutes into the movie, we can see a scene where all the emotions are sound asleep after a tiring day in the life of Riley. Riley, as we see in the scenes before, is growing up and she's having conflicting personality issues, but this time it's gonna be different because she's having a new emotion coming in. But in this scene, when the emotions are sleeping, if we zoom into Joy's part, we see a little toy of the one and only Bong, played by Richard Kind. It was one of the breakout characters of the first Inside Out movie and Riley's imaginary friend, which was a complete fan favorite. This character was probably the most loved character of the first Inside Out movie, and we really wished we could see him in the second one, and we see him right here, although we don't see him in person. And this is mainly because of his heroic sacrifice towards the end of the first movie. A scene that really touched many of us, and till this day many people have not forgotten, and because of that, they wanted to give Bing Bong a little homage in the second movie and keeping us reminded that Joy, the first and foremost important emotion of Riley, has never forgotten of Bing Bong. Many people actually wanted him to come back for the second movie, although it would have been possible because of course this is all in Riley's mind and he can always come back. The idea of him returning for the sequel felt like it could have ruined the most important part of the movie, which was the emotional impact of the second movie, as this character, so much loved by the fans, would have shaded many of the new emotions and the new characters that were gonna come in the second movie, like anxiety or envy or embarrassment. So Pixar decided to leave him aside while at the same time giving him an honoring scene. After this scene, anxiety comes in and she presents herself as the brand new emotion coming into Riley's life for good, and she ends up of course dominating the whole brain of Riley and causing a complete ruckus inside Riley's mind, and she even changes her personality from being a little girl to being a very envious and hardline girl, even siding with the popular girls instead of siding with her best friends. But in the scene when the emotions wake up alarmed by puberty and the mind workers come to replace Riley's consciousness, Riley wakes up feeling different because now she has hit puberty, and she starts acting very and overly dramatic in this scene, and her mom tries to calm her down, but she can't because she's feeling all of these emotions at the same time. But if we zoom out in the background, we can see that Riley has a couple of posters in her bedroom, and one of the posters that we see is of a boy band called Four Town. Well, if you know about this band, it's the band that we see in the Pixar movie Turning Red, released on March of 2022. This movie was an absolute masterpiece, but instead of being theatrically released, it was released on Disney Plus, and everyone that watched it for the first time loved it. It was so new and so original that it really gave us that Pixar feeling one more time back in 2022 when they weren't that many animated movies that would meet the standards, and Turning Red came in to show that Pixar was still alive. And in the Turning Red movie, Mei Lee, the protagonist of the movie, and her friends are obsessed over this boy band called Four Town, the same boy band that we see Riley having in her bedroom right here. A very interesting and funny Easter egg that you probably missed. As we know if you've watched the movie, anxiety ends up hijacking Riley's mind, and she ends up bottling up the other emotions and she sends them away to a vault. And this scene has a lot of meaning because it's an actual representation of a real-life term in psychology called bottled up emotions, where it's basically the fact that you don't let your emotions out and you don't speak about them. So for example, if you feel anger or if you feel joy, you keep these feelings inside instead of actually showing them. This can cause distress, mental breakdowns, and outbursts in the person who was doing this. So basically, Inside Out wanted to give a representation of these feelings in this movie in such a genius way. But the most important part of this scene is that in the vault where the bottled up emotions are kept, we can see Roman numerals which say ACX111. This translates to A113, which if you don't know, it's a famous Easter egg that Pixar has always put in their movies. A113 is actually the room number used by character animation students in the California Institute of Arts when they were starting out the company. These students went on to become the founders of Pixar Animation Studios, and the tradition has continued going on ever since they released the Toy Story movie with these Easter egg inside. But although Pixar has always shown this Easter egg before, in the past, this Easter egg used to be hidden somewhere and written in actual form. But in recent Pixar movies, this has gotten more clever, like we see in Elemental where the Easter egg involves the periodic table. And here in Inside Out 2, we can see it in Roman numerals. The next secret we see here is in the scene when all the emotions are asleep because they are sound and calm because of the fact that previously Riley has said to herself that she's a good person, which reinforced the belief system in a good way and kept it safe. But before all of this happened, a sound alarm went off called Puberty, and nobody knows what's going on. Joy knows somewhat what's going on because she's the most experienced emotion, and she goes to the board, and all of a sudden, workers turn up. They change everything in the headquarters, the board, the colors, absolutely everything. But one thing that you probably didn't notice while watching the movie is that if you listen closely, we can hear one of the workers talk, and the voice for one of these characters is John Ratzenberg. He's a legendary voice actor who has voiced one of our favorite characters in Pixar, and not only in Pixar but in other movies. He usually makes a lot of cameos in Pixar movies, but he hasn't done one in 4 years, and this is the first. He voices Fritz the Mind Worker, as we see in the scene, who calls one of the original emotions jerks. After misinterpreting what was going on because they basically caught the original emotions off guard, and because, of course, of the new sense of sarcasm that is welcomed in Riley's mind. Next up, if we go back to the scene when anxiety first appears in the movie, like I said before, Riley now is growing up and she has to get used to new emotions coming in, and one of these emotions is anxiety. But she is not alone, as she says in the scene. She says she has a lot of friends coming with her, and it's 3 more people. It's ennui, envy, and embarrassment. But in this scene when the new emotions present themselves, the other emotions like joy don't know what they're doing there, and they don't know how to pronounce their names. Specifically ennui, which is a pretty hard name to pronounce. And she tries to pronounce it, but she doesn't say it correctly, and in an attempt to say it right, she says onward. Well, this is a reference to the Pixar movie released in 2020 called Onward. It goes about a magical world full of technological advances and about 2 elven brothers, Ian and Barley, who set out to resurrect their deceased father for one day so they can show them a lot of things about their lives. Onward is said to be one of the worst Pixar movies ever released, and to date, it is one of the lowest grossing films of Pixar Animation Studios, only garnering $142 million worldwide, which is absolutely catastrophical for Pixar Animation Studios. Next up, we have the scene when Riley is playing hockey with her friends in the stadium. If we take a close look at the stadium, we see that there are a lot of ads in there, just like in the real world, of companies promoting their brands in the sides of the stadium. But if we zoom into one of these ads, we see that it says Spinney. Well, this is actually a reference and tribute to Caroll Spinney, the man behind the characters like Big Bird and Oscar-winning The Grouch. Well, the main reason why we see it in here is because the main director of Inside Out and Inside Out 2, Kelsey Mann, was such a huge fan of Big Bird when he was a kid, and he actually met Caroll in real life, and he said this about him: "He was such a lovely man, and I feel so grateful that I had the chance to meet him, and I actually recognized him in the mall, and I felt like I had won the lottery. He was such a kind, gentle-hearted person." Because of this, he decided to give the tribute to the man in the movie, and there was actually a scene that was later deleted where the girls go to a pizza place called Spinney's Pizza.